22 years ago, next month, I was in a plane that crashed.
Whenever I hear somebody talking about how they've been through a plane crash, I find it really interesting because, as you can imagine, most people don't survive plane crashes. And a guy like this guy, Tucker Carlson, who's super famous, him surviving a plane crash and then telling the story about it, I was very intrigued to what he was going to say. If you aren't familiar with who this guy talking is, his name is Tucker Carlson. He's a really famous news journalist. He used to be on a major news network, Fox, in the US, but he got fired from that and started his own show. And just recently, he did an interview with Putin. And if you don't know who Putin is, I can't really help you. But I'm really curious to see what this guy says about an accident that happened 20 years ago. Being in a plane crash is a very traumatic thing. People tend to, in very high-stress situations, remember things differently. So he's going to tell one story the way he remembers it, and another person who could be sitting right behind him might have a totally different viewpoint of what happened. So I'm very curious to see what he says in this interview or this story that he's telling about a plane crash that he survived while he's flying out of the Middle East. It's pretty wild. All right, check out this video.
22 years ago, next month, I was in a plane that crashed, amazingly, in the Middle East, flying from Peshawar, Pakistan. The Khyber Pass was right after 9/11. I was going over to cover the Taliban, and something happened in the cargo hold, and we went down in a sand dune in Dubai.
When you say something to me like we went down in a sand dune in Dubai, this is what I'm imagining when he says something like that. Listen to Tucker as he says this.
And something happened in the cargo hold, and we went down in a sand dune in Dubai.
So at this point, this is what I'm imagining, this is what's going on. And he's on a passenger plane, but what you may or may not know is below your seats on most passenger planes is a cargo hold area. That cargo hold area is where all your baggage goes. But also, a lot of airlines, I've talked about this in some of the other videos, but they make money moving cargo. So the additional space that they have, so let's say you have 100 bags, I'm just making up a number, and those bags have a traditional amount of weight that they're going to be, well then they have freight room where they can take an extra 5,000 pounds of freight and then they can make extra money on that flight. So they have the passenger seats and your bag that goes underneath there, and then a separate amount of money that they can make moving cargo freight inside there. Now, a passenger plane cargo freight is a different type of freight than what you would get if, let's say, on a straight freighter. So when I'm flying passengers, I can move certain stuff with them. And when I'm flying cargo, I can move other things. Like you're not going to get certain type of weapons and certain battery types will never be on a typical plane that you as a passenger will ride on, but they will put it on a cargo flight. I couldn't find any actual report or breakdown of what actually happened in this, so we're going to take his recollection of everything that happened and see if we can figure out what actually happened based off of what he's telling us. So for reference of what he's talking about is they're flying out of Pakistan. He said they were flying out of Peshawar, and I believe they went through Islamabad on their way down to Dubai. And for a point of reference, just up the road here is one of aviation's most loved people. This guy was living just up the road in this town right here. Well, he was living there until 2011 when he met another ginger fellow, which you may or may not know, this guy. This guy came over for a late night visit one day in 2011, and that was the end of Osama bin Laden. Coincidentally, I met that guy while I was, of course, having free breakfast in a hotel. I saw the guy come in, and I was on the phone with somebody, and I said, "Oh my gosh, dude, Rob O'Neill just walked in." Rob O'Neill was part of the task force of guys that went in and got bin Laden. But I saw him from a distance away. I knew exactly who it was. So I let him order his food, and I just went up to him after he finished ordering. And I talked with him. Super humble guy. For a guy that gets to that level of where he got in his career, super humble, really cool. We chatted for just a few minutes, but I didn't want to hold him up. And I didn't ask him for any photos. So I guess what do they say? If there's no photo, that didn't happen. But super humble guy, really nice. I got to talk with him for a few minutes. So it has nothing to do with this story, but I just thought it was funny that this guy Tucker was in Pakistan, just down the road from where bin Laden was, and he was down there interviewing the Taliban. Probably nobody at that time obviously knew that bin Laden was probably just up the road there a couple hours away. So it's just funny, and I thought it was coincidental because aviation. Okay, I'm getting sidetracked. So back to this video, we have Tucker Carlson in a plane like this hitting a sand dune in Dubai. Here we go.
Obviously, I survived, but it was a Pakistan International Airways flight. And the thing that changed my life about that experience was something happened horrible to the plane. Like there was an explosion in the cargo hold, some debate about what it was, but it happened. And the plane starts dropping and the wing appears to detach, the right wing. And plane is like struggling for altitude and going up, gunning the engines and sideways. It's like 3 a.m. over the Arabian Sea. People are freaking out on the plane.
Now, like I talked about earlier, it is a common occurrence in high-stress situations, especially when you don't understand everything that's going on. Your brain will interpret things and hear things and see things differently than somebody else. That's why in a lot of high-stress situations or a bank robbery, they'll interview different people, and different people will have a totally different perspective on what happened. So this is Tucker's recollection of this story from 22 years ago. So it's a long time ago, and it's a high-stress situation. And if me and Tucker were sitting on that exact same plane, we would be interpreting that information differently, because I'm used to flying on planes, obviously, and I understand what would be going on. If I'm hearing the engine roaring or the plane is moving sideways like he's describing, I would understand more about what's going on, because that's what I do for a living, right? He's there as a passenger, so it's going to be a higher stress because he's going to understand less of what's going on. And when you understand less of what's going on, it could be a lot scarier. For me, if there's an explosion on a plane and then I hear an engine roaring, that's going to make me nervous. That's going to make anybody nervous. A regular engine failure, the engine just fails on takeoff without the explosion from the cargo area that he's describing, that's not going to really worry me too much. But an explosion, then rattling and parts of the wing coming off, that's going to make me really nervous. But just for the official record here, planes with only one wing fall out of the sky. You could have a part of a wing missing or a chunk. Those are things that are possible, that the plane will still generate lift. These planes are made to withstand all kinds of crazy stuff. You've seen in World War II, these planes are just shot up and they still continue to fly. Well, it's the same for commercial aviation. A lot of things can be broken on this. A chunk of the wing can be missing and the plane will still be generating lift, but you can't have the entire wing missing. That's never going to work out. The part that would concern me the most is when he says this about the cargo area.
Something happened horrible to the plane, like there was an explosion in the cargo hold.
That would concern me the most, because now you're dealing with an unknown factor. Now that explosion could be that the engine had an explosion. That would be less of an issue. An uncontained engine explosion, that's okay, that's a problem, but that will rattle the whole plane. That will be very scary, but that's different from the actual cargo area of the plane or something in the pressurized area of the plane. There was a case where there was an explosion, let's say, near the cargo area. Basically, the plane wasn't pressurizing correctly and it ripped off part of it near the cargo area and it ripped off a huge hole. It was back in the 80s. This is a photo of the plane here. It's obviously a 747, and that explosion from the depressurization of the cargo area ripped off this entire side of the plane. Now that was caused from a design flaw. There was no explosive charge or anything. It was a design flaw in the plane, which obviously they have fixed. And what happened is when that rapid depressurization happened, that explosion happened, it was in the cargo area and it blew off, and then it damaged both the engines on the right-hand side of the plane and then ripped off a side of the plane. So here you have this plane with this massive gaping hole in the side of the plane that's up in the air, and they were able to come back around with 2 damaged engines on the right side of the plane and come back in and land. That's how incredible these planes are. They're just so resilient. So people get nervous about a small thing, but you can see that had a gigantic, enormous hole on the side of it. The engines on the right-hand side obviously ingested a lot of that debris, and the engines aren't made for that. So those engines are in bad shape, huge hole in the side of the plane, and they were able to come back in and land. So it could be that right engine basically had an explosion. And
hope you enjoyed the latest clip from 74 Gear. We're eager to dive into our thoughts and kickstart the discussion in the comments below. Don't forget to show some love by smashing the like button, and if you haven't already, follow us and subscribe for more amazing content like what you just watched. Let's keep the conversation flying. The recent revelation of Tucker Carlson's harrowing escape from a plane crash 2 decades ago is more than a riveting narrative of survival. It's a testament to the indomitable spirit that defines some of our greatest public figures. Tucker Carlson, a beacon of conservative journalism and a fearless challenger of the status quo, exemplifies a fortitude that few possess. Learning of his survival in a plane crash while flying out of the Middle East post 9/11 adds yet another layer to the storied resilience of this influential commentator. Carlson's experience is particularly intriguing given that most assume a plane crash is tantamount to a death sentence. Yet here we have a man well known for his intellectual acuity and piercing interviews, describing an event where he stared death in the face and lived to tell the tale. The fact that this traumatic experience occurred while he was on a journalistic mission to cover the Taliban in the volatile aftermath of the September 11 attacks further underscores his commitment to bringing the truth to the public, even at great personal risk. His ability to recount this event from 22 years ago also raises questions about memory and perception under stress. It's understood that individuals caught in life-threatening situations often recall events differently due to the high stress involved. Carlson's retelling of the incident where the aircraft went down in a sand dune in Dubai is his perspective, shaped by his own experience, surely different from that of any other passenger. This divergence in narratives is a psychological phenomenon well known in crisis memories. Yet Carlson's account provides a singular glimpse into what happens when disaster strikes unexpectedly. Adding to the riveting nature of Carlson's tale is his status as a media powerhouse who, after leaving a major network like Fox, has continued to impact journalism with his own show. His recent interview with Vladimir Putin, a figure central to global geopolitics, attests to his continued relevance and ability to engage with some of the world's most powerful leaders. Tucker Carlson's survival story isn't just a compelling anecdote, it's a reminder of the tenacity required to navigate the dangerous terrains, both literal and metaphorical, of reporting and commentary. His resilience, evident in his work as well as his life stories, not only resonates with his audience, but also with a broader conservative value system that venerates strength, perseverance, and the pursuit of truth. This account of his experience provides us with a deeper appreciation of the man behind the desk, a commentator who continues to shape public discourse and who has, quite literally, risen from the sands of adversity. It's stories like Carlson's that not only captivate and inspire, but also remind us of the profound unpredictability of life and the remarkable human capacity to endure and prevail.